Hello friends, welcome back to my channel, and today we are back with another exciting tutorial. So this will be a Grafana tutorial for beginners where we'll be talking about how to set up Grafana, and along with Grafana we can make use of Google Sheets as data source. This request came to me asking for this tutorial from one of my friends, so I'm doing this tutorial for help all of you how to set up Grafana along with Google Sheet as a data source. So if you see in Grafana setup, once you set up a Grafana, you will have a different data source available in Grafana. So but by default you will not see Google Sheet as a data source. You may see MySQL, Influxdb, those kind of things, which we have already created a lot of tutorials on that, how to make use of that. So you can check out my playlist for Grafana to see how to set up Prometheus or other data source like MySQL, Influxdb and all those things. But in our tutorial, what we need to do is we need to set up a plugin. So this will be a tutorial where you can also learn about how to set up plugin in Grafana. So Grafana usually supports three types of plugin. So one is like a panels. So why means like, by default what you don't have it in Grafana, you can install it using the plugins where you can get more features in the panel, or you can add more data source like Google Sheets or other data sources, and also you can have apps. So some examples like we have world map panels or clock panels or pie chart panels for data source like Google BigQuery or Google Sheets or Splunk, and you have apps like Zabbix, Redis. So there are different kind of things. You can also do an installation using plugins. So you can go to grafana.com docs Grafana latest plugins, where you will get all the information. And if you see, if I go to data sources of plugins, you have a lot of data sources like Elasticsearch, MySQL. These are also some of them by default available, but you can see Google Sheets also is available here, which is not available by default, which you can install it. And you can also see like we have apps where you can see like Zabbix, Percona. So there are different kind of apps as well, and also like different new panels which you can add, like world and map panel, clock, pie chart, graph. So there are other panels as well which you can add up, which is not by defaultly available in Grafana. So what we are going to do in this tutorial, like we'll see the complete process how to configure Grafana and Google Sheet as a data source. So in order to start, what we will do is we will set up a Grafana as a Docker container. So I had a previous tutorial how to show you to set up Grafana as a Docker container, but I will also show it here as well, simply quickly like as a recap, so you can set up your Grafana as a Docker container. And we will also show you step by step process how to install Google Sheets plugin in Grafana. So there are different ways you can use Grafana CLI to install the plugin. Also you can add as an environmental variable when you create the Docker container itself, so the plugin by default get installed. And we'll also have to create Google API keys to in order to integrate Google Sheets with Grafana. You need to have an authentication mechanism. So we will see how we can create Google API keys and how to enable this Google Sheet API so that Grafana can interact with this Google Sheet. And we will configure Google Sheet as a data source in Grafana, and we will see how we can see the data coming into Grafana, and you can make use of that to write some queries and create some dashboards. So that will be our overall process in this tutorial. So before I get into the actual demo, I would request you to click on my subscribe button if you have not done yet, and you can also like my videos, share and comment. I hope you like it, and also give your feedback. So in order to start, this is a Docker machine. So if you can see, I have a Docker installed and running, and I have to set up a Docker container for Grafana first. So in order to create a Docker container for Grafana, it's a simple process where you have to run a docker run command, and you have to map your port. So by default Grafana uses 3000 port in the container, so I'm mapping that into the machine as well. And you can give a name for Grafana, and also I'm going to set up some environment variables so I can set the username and password for the Grafana login. If you don't give that, by default you can use admin as a username and password, and the Grafana image. So let's run this command in the Docker machine. So let me run the command which we just showed you, like docker run -d for detach mode, and the port 3000 is mapped, and the name, any name you can give, and the environmental variable to create a username and password, and the Grafana latest image. So now you can see the container is created. So if I go to docker ps, you can see the container is running, and you should be able to access this Grafana using the IP address of this machine and the port 3000. Okay, so since I already have the image, it quickly created the container. If you don't have the image, it will download the image and it will create the container. So in order to access the Grafana, you need to use your IP address and the port 3000, and if you run it, you should be able to get the login page. And if you not able to access, probably one reason would be like the port 3000 is not open in the firewall, so you can run the firewall exception command so that port 3000 is enabled in that machine. And I will give all the link for this tutorial in the video description, so you can go through the commands and also the links, documentation links. So just check the video description for if you have any links or commands which you are not clear about it. So you can log in the Grafana using admin as username, which we set in the environmental variable, and you just log in. Now if you go to data sources, you can see by default there are a lot of data sources, and if you search Google Sheet, you don't see Google Sheets, but you can see Google Cloud Monitoring. So the reason is because Google Sheet is not a default data source. So now what you can do is you can go to your machine where you're running the Docker container, and you can log into the container where the Grafana container. So I will use docker exec it and the container ID or the name and bash. Okay, so once you log in, you're inside the Grafana container, and you can see the configuration and everything. If you go to bin, you can see the Grafana details are there. Now you have Grafana CLI, Grafana server and everything. Now what we are going to do is we are going to use Grafana CLI, and we are going to run the command to install the Google Sheets plugin. So for that, what you can do is you can use Grafana CLI, and you can call plugins, and you have to give install and the name of the plugin. So here in our case, we need to run the the Google Sheets plugin. So the plugin name should be Grafana Google Sheets -data source. So the whole command what you need to run is Grafana -CLI plugins install and the name of the plugin. So let me run this and just wait for the installation to be completed. So now you can see the installation is completed. So it has downloaded the Google Sheets zip file, and it has also done the installation part. So now what you can do is it says like we need to restart the Grafana for the plugin to get affected. So let me exit from the container, and if you go back to your Grafana, you still should not have the data source for Google Sheet, because we have not restarted the container. So let's go back and let me restart the container. So I will restart. So let me restart the container which is running on Grafana. So let me restart. Now you can see the container is still running. So if I go back to the Grafana, if I go back to the data source and if I search, now you can see we have a Google Sheets data source is shown up here, right? So now the plugin is installed and we have the data source option to be available. Now we can configure the Google Sheets, but before I do that, I also would like to show you a better way to do this. So this is one way to do the installation of plugin after you create the container for Grafana. The other way is like when you create the container itself, you can mention the plugin to be installed. So what I will do is I will clear out the screen and let me delete this container. Okay, so docker arm, since the container is running, I'm just going to force it. Okay, so I don't have any containers running now. So now what I want to do is I want to install the Grafana container along with the Google Sheet plugin. So what the changes with the previous command is I just used another environmental variable or gf_install_plugin, and I'm going to mention which plugin has to be installed. So when you create the container using this command, it will default install the Google Sheet plugin, and we should have the data source available by default. So let me create the container using this new format. So I'm using docker run -d and p for the port 3000 and the name for the container, and you can see I'm using the environmental variable where I'm going to mention the Grafana Google Sheet data source, okay, which is the plugin I want to install. Rest of thing is same, where I'm using the admin password and image for Grafana. So now we can see we have the container running. So let's try to access our container, the Grafana again. So now we can see the Grafana is up again, and we have to log in. So log in again with admin and the password which you have set at the time of creating the container. So if I go back to your data source, and if I search for Google Sheet, you can see by default itself Google Sheet is up. So now we need to configure the data source. So to configure, we need an API key, and we need to create that. So in order to create that, before that I will just show you, like, I have a Google Sheet here. Okay, this is a sample Google Sheet which just talk about football players. So if I go back to the sheet, so whichever sheet you have, you can use it, save it as in your Google Sheet, or you can save the content. Okay, but you need to make some changes in the Google Sheet, because by default it will be private only for you, the Google Sheet. So you need to click on the share button, and you need to change, currently it's in restricted mode. You need to click on change to anyone with the link. So you should see like anyone with the link, and you just need to copy this link as well, because we need to make use of this content between the d slash and edit. So that will be the spreadsheet ID. So we need to make use of this for configuring using Grafana. Okay, so make a note of this ID, which will be used in our Grafana dashboard. So let me put the value as done. So just make sure that you make it like anyone with the link, and click on done. Okay, so that part is done from the Google Sheet. So that part you have to make sure that the Google Sheet is set as available for anyone, and also just make sure that you have a look on this sheet name. Okay, so sheet name here, it shows data. Sometime it will be sheet 1, or it may be anything. So just make a note of that as well, because we need that as well for running the query. So another part is like I will give this link for checking or creating the API key. So in order to create the API key, you need to go to console.cloud.google.com/home. So I will give this link as well in the video description, so you can just click from there. Okay, and once you go there, by default you will not see any project, so it will ask you to create a project. So you need to create a project. In my case, I already created a project. Okay, so I will click on that. So if you create a project, you can after creating the project, you can see here, if you see, you will see able to see the project here. So you can see a drop down where you should be able to select your project. So I'm inside the project now. Okay, and inside the project, let me go to you will be able to see a screen like this on the left side, where you'll have a dashboard, library, credential, auth content screen, domain certificate verification, and all those things. So what you need to do is you need to click on credentials. Okay, and you need to create an API key. So you can see now I don't have any API key, so you need to click on create credentials. Okay, so I will click on create credential, and you have to select API key, because we are going to create an API. So click on the API, and you will be able to see the API. Okay, so you can copy this content. Just make sure that you make a note of this one, because we need this API to configure. It's not a problem if you don't copy it here. Also, you will be able to see it from the other screen as well. So if you want to create any restriction, you can click on restrict key, and in our case we don't want to restrict anything, because we are not going to set any special permission here. So by default you can keep it none and do not restrict. But if you want to restrict, you can click here, and you can select what kind of queries you should restrict. But in our case, Google Sheet is not available here, so I'm not going to set anything there. So I will just keep it as do not restrict, and I will just save it. Okay, now you can see the API key is created, and you can copy it from here as well. Okay, now the next step is, if you go back to the dashboards, you can see on the top you will have enable APIs and services. So you need to click on enable API and services, and there you can search for Google Sheet, and you should be able to see Google Sheet API. So you should see this search, you can click on it, and you will have an option called enable. So you just enable that. Okay, so if you don't enable this API, you will not be able to connect from Grafana to your Google Sheet. Okay, so now we are done. So we have enabled the Google Sheet API. If you go back to your home page and your project and credential, you have a API key. I will copy this API. Okay, I will go to your Grafana and I will enter this API key here. Okay, and this is the API key. I will click on save and test. Now you can see we are success with the data source configuration. Now if I go back to your Explorer, okay, or you can go it in a different way also. Not only Explorer, you can go to your dashboard, and whichever way it's same, because dashboard also talk about spreadsheet, and you have a range, you have a cache time, and you have a timer. Okay, so what you can do is basically I will show you, like I will go to Explore to just show you the content. Okay, so I have a spreadsheet ID, right? So I showed you like the spreadsheet ID come from here. It should be this link. From this link we need to take the ID, which is from here to here. Okay, so you just copy that and you put that in the spreadsheet ID. Okay, now we can see we have data coming up, right? So we have the whole data coming up. Now if you have a place where you can define the range, you don't need the whole content. So if you want some range, what you can do is you can put the name of the sheet. So you need to put sheet. So the sheet name should be data and the exclamation mark, and there should be from which column to which column. So I want only A, B, C, right? And I will just remove this cache as well to 0, so I don't want the cache. And I will also use time filter probably, and I'll just run it. Now if you see, I have only 3 columns, right? A, B, C, which is coming from this sheet A, B, and C, right? If I want D as well, I'll just change this to D, and I'll just run the query again. Now you can see we have one more column for D, right? And if I want the other topic as well, like E and F, I can use that as well. So if I go and change from A to F, now you can see we have other columns as well. So based on what data you want, you just need to change the range, or otherwise you can use it default, and you should be able to get the whole content. Now we can see like we have integrated Google Sheet with Grafana as a data source, and the data is coming up. Now we can also create dashboard. So you can click on create dashboard, and you can click on create empty. And the data source, again, it should be Google Sheets. Okay, and the spreadsheet ID I showed you from where you can copy it. Now you can see once you enter it, we are getting the data here, and you can change the charts. Like I want a bar chart, so it will give you the details like what it is. And if you want some other kind of chart, it's a table like it here, you'll get a table like this. Okay, let me put the class a little bit like this. So I just need only 4 columns. Okay, and if I want some status, or you can define what you need to do. So you need to make the queries based on that, so you can get the right data. So I'm just putting some samples here. So but it also has to based on the data which you have it in the Excel sheet. Okay, so based on that you can create the charts and dashboards. Since it's not a time series, you won't get time kind of things, but if your data coming into the Google Sheet with the time status, then you can use other kind of charts and everything, and you should be able to do it and put it into your dashboard. So these are some samples, like you just put the spreadsheet ID. So you can see like you can create a different kind of panels. So it's tables or other kind of panels. So based on that you can create and put it in your dashboard. So as I said, it's all depends upon what kind of data you're sending from your Google Sheets to Grafana. So in our case it's more of this kind of data, so I'm just showing that as a sample. So but I hope you understood how to create this. And also, when you create the dashboard, I've showed you, like, you need to give the range if you want to make some edit, like, the data is coming from the sheet name. So you have to be very careful, like if you the name of this sheet name is something different, you have to use that in the range as well. Okay, so that is all for this tutorial. I hope it's an informative tutorial for you. So kindly click on the subscribe button for more videos, and keep supporting me by liking the videos, sharing, and giving your feedback in the comment section. So thank you for watching.